Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special game for a very special reason. In this game, Magnus Carlsen, the greatest chess player who ever lived, arguably, proves what I've been saying, let's say, for the past 10 years, and against one of the strongest players in the world. And you'll see what I mean by this very quickly on after the opening. So it's clutch chess. It is day 3. Every victory is worth 3 points. We all know that Magnus won the entire event, but this game, I think, is just a masterpiece. And yeah, let's dive straight into it. So Magnus defeats Gukesh twice in a row, gets 6 full points for beating Gukesh. Now he faces Fabi, and then Hikaru will be faced in round 3. So let's check it out. Magnus with white opens with knight to f3. Okay, we have pawn to c5, pawn to c4, and pawn to g6. We have pawn to d4 and captures on d4. So we have the symmetrical English. Knight captures on d4, knight to c6, and pawn to e4. Okay, we have knight to f6 and knight to c3. Transposing into the accelerated dragon of the Sicilian defense. And now, of course, the Maroczy bind variation. I would say the Maroczy bind is tactical, but I would say anything other than the Maroczy bind is even more tactical, if that makes sense. We have pawn to d6, bishop to e2, and knight captures on d4. So all very well-known theory. Queen captures, bishop to g7, and bishop to e3. We've had this many times. We know that there simply aren't any good discoveries with the knight, so you can't really take advantage of this. Castles kingside. Now the bishop is defended, and the queen could overstay her welcome on d4. We have queen back to d2, and now still a very, very theoretical bishop e6 top move, pawn to a5 second top move. Fabi goes for the second top move. We have castles kingside and pawn to a4. And here, usually everyone plays f3, but all of the other moves are playable as well. Any rook can come to any square. Bishop to d4 also very popular. Magnus goes rook f to d1, which is not as popular, and there are some games where queen to a5 was played. Here, Fabi goes bishop to e6, and it is now as of move 12 that we have a completely new game. Both of them playing fairly quickly. Fabi even more so, spending only mere seconds to get here. We have bishop to d4 and queen to a5. Okay, pretty standard idea. And Magnus goes queen to e3. He unpins, knight to d7, a standard sort of unburdening maneuver where you want to tread off the dark square bishops. And Magnus throws in a knight to d5, where he's saying, okay, if you capture on d4, I'm going to capture on e7 with check, and then I'm just going to be up a pawn. So you have to react to this. You could go back with the queen if you prefer material on the board, but there's no need to do it. Sometimes in some lines, usually you go rook to e8 first before developing the queen to a5. But okay, bishop captures on d5. Now you could, okay, bishop captures, king captures, and now you could capture with the c pawn, with the e pawn, with the rook. All three options are fine. But here Magnus decides to go after the e7 pawn. It is a little bit weak, and Fabi goes queen to b6. Saying, okay, you have the e7 pawn, I'm going to capture the b2 pawn. Queen to c3, check by Magnus, knight to f6, and now rook to d4, preparing to bring the other rook into the game, but also maybe some tactical ideas are also possible here. Queen e3, rook e4, who knows, depending on what Fabi plays. Rook f to c8, and now rook 8 to d1. We have rook to c5, and now Magnus goes after the knight, and it makes sense. It's in between the queen and the black king. Pawn to g4. Okay, unpinning king to g8. We have pawn to h4 and rook to e8. We have pawn to g5, chasing away the knight, knight to d7, and rook to e4, preventing that pawn from ever moving forward. And this diagonal is a bit of a problem for Fabi. Imagine if this pawn was on h6, you would have probably a lost position. So queen to c7, now preparing pawn to b5 to go after the c4 pawn. We have queen to e3, unpinning from the rook, and Fabi goes pawn to b5. And if you put this position to an engine, the engine will say, okay, just capture the pawn on b5. But Magnus knows this, and I've been saying it for the past 10 years. If it's possible, play it. Magnus plays pawn to b4. And the engine says, okay, that's not a great move, but against a human player, it's the absolute best move, because look at what Magnus creates. A captures on b3, en passant. Now A captures on b3, and after B captures on c4, Magnus says, I don't need to recapture. What's better than playing pawn to b4? It's playing pawn to b4 twice. And now he plays pawn to b4, creating a passed b pawn. Now, yes, for the moment, he's down a pawn, and Fabi also has a passed c pawn, but look at how the game evolves. We have rook to b5, Rook captures on c4. There's no way to keep defending that pawn. Now it's equal material. Fabi has a 0 passed pawns and Magnus has a passed b pawn. Now, if I ask you, would you rather have a position that's equal in material, where you're the side pushing a passed pawn, or would you rather be, the side where it's equal material, but you're not the side that's pushing the passed pawn? Magnus understands this, and that is why he did what he did. So we have the passed b pawn created, queen b7 going after the pawn, and now again, finding the next move might seem like tedious work, but if you constantly think about the b4 pawn, it should come to you naturally. Rook to c7, attacking the queen and the knight, and well, if the rook is captured, which is your only move, then you can get this rook off the board. Queen captures, we have bishop captures, and rook to b8. Again, saying, okay, but now that the bishop moves, we're going to lose that pawn. No, we're not. Rook c1. Now, Fabi has to move the queen somewhere to keep that knight in check. So we have queen to d8, and now Magnus captures it. Bishop captures, queen captures, and now queen to d4. And this is the problem for Fabi. Fabi plays queen to f5, and Magnus just goes to rook to c7. And he does not have a worry in the world. Because of the back rank and because of the control of this diagonal, plus the passed b pawn. So Fabi goes pawn to e5, we have d captures on e6, queen captures, you have to defend the pawn on d6, and now even rook to c6, going after the pawn here, and best for Fabi would be just to play rook d8 and allow Magnus to start pushing that pawn. So it would go all the way to b5 and beyond, but Fabi played pawn to h6, and this is what I meant. It's an equal position, yes, but your opponent is the one that has the passed pawn that can be pushed, and you constantly have to worry about b5. So Fabi does not find the best move, rather he keeps the rook on the b file to control the b5 square, and also he's down to 20 seconds on the clock. Remember, this is rapid, they have 5 seconds increment each move they make. So rook captures on d6, and okay, now Fabi has queen to e1 check, but after king to g2, tactics work in Magnus's favor. If you capture with the rook, then a simple rook d8 check, king h7, and rook to h8 is checkmate, and it doesn't change things much if you capture with the queen. Rook to d8 check. Now, if rook captures, you pick up the free queen on b4. Notice how everything about this game is about the b4 square. And of course, if king h7, then queen to h8 will be checkmate. So after king to g2, h captures on g5, h captures, and now queen to e7. Fabi realizes that the b4 pawn is immortal, not just immortal, reborn. It was the b pawn, then he lost the b pawn, and then the a pawn got promoted to a b pawn. We have rook to d5. Again, the pawn is untouchable. Rook d8 check solves everything for white. Queen to b7. Fabi has to wait and see what happens. We have king to g1, unpinning from this diagonal, and queen to c7. We have pawn to b5. Finally, Fabi had to lie. Even though before moving the queen to c7, maybe you can still hold with queen to a8, but even that makes it a terrible position for black. After queen to c7, the position is just lost for Fabi, and Magnus, of course, plays it pawn to b5. So it took a while for him to play it, but everything was perfectly set up. We have queen to c1 with check, king to g2, and now queen back to c7. Magnus goes rook to d7. Okay, queen to b6, offering a queen trade. And now you might think, okay, how does Magnus do it now? Where is the trick? There's no trick. Now you just trade into a winning rook and pawn endgame. And that's it. Rook to d5. And Magnus knows this is winning. He controls too many squares, and there's no way for that black king to ever enter the game. All it takes for you to gain control over the e5 square, and that's it. The black king is absolutely useless. So pawn to f6 by Fabi, pawn to f4. Again, you're not going to allow these two squares to the black king. F captures, king f7, king to f3. We have king to e6 and king to e4. Magnus wins control over the e5 square, and that's practically it. Now it's merely a matter of making a zugzwang. We have rook to b8. Rook to c5, now preparing to go further, and then king d5. And indeed, if you just repeat moves, then you might be thinking, okay, how do we cross the magical barrier that is the 5th rank? Well, you don't. You just go the other way around, and that's it. Win the game this way. So instead, after rook c5, Fabi said, all right, you can come in. King to d7. King to d5, we have rook to f8, now trying some tricks, but there are no tricks. Pawn to b6. We have rook to f5 with check, king to c4, rook to f1, of course a rook trade is out of the question, rook to f1, pawn to b7, and now rook to c1 with check, king to b5, and we have some sort of a version of the Lucena position with, some excess material on the board. So continuing past this point would make zero sense with players of of this caliber. And he was in this position on move 57 that Fabiano Caruana resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. For those of you who are maybe new to chess, I will show why. After you give a few more checks, rook b1 check, king to a6, rook a1 check, king to b6. Now after rook b1 check, there's rook b5, and there is no way to stop the promotion of the pawn. You can even win this pawn if you want. White doesn't even have to defend it. White can just go right after the g pawn, and let's say after captures king to d6, you try following, but king to e6, and now you just cut off the black king. Let's say king d7, king captures king to e7, and now king h7. You control the three most important squares in a king and pawn endgame, and you advance the pawn to victory. You promote the pawn to a queen, and then easily checkmate the black king with the white king and the white queen. So yeah, after king b5, of course, these guys know this as soon as they see such a position, and Fabio resigns. And the game 2, Magnus also won, so he got the full 6 points from Gukesh, full 6 points from Fabi, and only Hikaru held him to a draw for the 2 games, even though Magnus won the tournament after he beat Fabi. So hard to say how motivated he was to beat Hikaru. I imagine he's always extremely motivated, but maybe he just thought that, okay, now we play for fun, for views, for honor. Not everything is about gaining that maybe full point. Who knows what happened? But yeah, I know you guys are always thinking, okay, what does this agadmator dude knows? He's only 2500 bullet, talking about b4 all the time. But there you have it, from the absolute best player of this generation, definitely, perhaps even ever. It's all about the b4 square and the b4 pawn. So hope you enjoyed that. I would like to thank Gerard St. Pierre, Braces Valley Chess Society, Francesco Corradi, Uzi Shalev, and Francisco Santana for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. And if you also want to learn how to wield the B pawn with such a deadly purpose, first link in the description below. Download Lotus Chess and start your journey today. See you soon.